In the days when Saul was king of Israel, the Philistines gathered their armies for war. They camped on one hillside, and the army of Israel camped on the other, with the Valley of Elah lying quiet between them. For 40 days the two armies stared at one another across the dry valley, and for 40 days no one moved. Each morning a giant came down from the Philistine camp. His name was Goliath of Gath. He stood more than 9 feet tall, taller than any man Israel had ever seen. He wore a bronze helmet that shone like fire in the sun, and a coat of armor so heavy that 2 men could scarcely lift it. In his hand he carried a spear like a weaver's beam, and his shield-bearer walked before him. Goliath would plant his feet in the valley and roar up at the soldiers of Israel. "Choose a man," he shouted. "Let him come down and fight me. If he can kill me, we will be your servants. But if I kill him, you will serve us." And then he would laugh, a deep, terrible laugh, and curse the God of Israel. When King Saul and his soldiers heard him, their hearts melted with fear. No one would go. Far from the battlefield, in the little town of Bethlehem, lived a man named Jesse. Jesse had 8 sons, and his 3 oldest had gone to fight with Saul. The youngest son was a shepherd boy named David. He was not yet a man, only a youth, slight of frame, with sun-warmed cheeks and steady hands. He kept his father's sheep among the hills, and he was not afraid of lions or bears, because the Lord was with him. One morning Jesse called David in from the fields. "Take this grain and bread to your brothers," he said, "and these 10 cheeses to their captain. See how your brothers are doing, and bring me word." So David rose early, left the sheep with another keeper, and set out for the camp of Israel. He arrived just as the army was marching out to their lines, shouting the war cry. David ran to greet his brothers, and as he stood with them, the giant came down from the Philistine ranks once more. Goliath shouted his challenge across the valley, and David watched in wonder as every soldier of Israel turned and fled in fear. "Who is this Philistine," David asked, "that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His brothers heard him and were angry, but the words reached the ears of King Saul, and the king sent for him. David stood before Saul, small in the doorway of the king's tent. "Let no man's heart fail because of him," David said. "Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Saul shook his head. "You're only a boy. He has been a warrior since his youth." But David answered, "When a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went after it and rescued the lamb from its mouth. The Lord who delivered me from the lion and the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." So Saul agreed. He dressed David in his own armor, a bronze helmet, a coat of mail, a heavy sword. But the armor was too large and the sword too heavy, and David could barely walk. "I cannot go in these," he said gently, "for I have not tested them." And he laid the armor aside. Instead, David took his shepherd's staff in his hand. He walked down to the brook that ran through the valley, and there, in the clear running water, he chose 5 smooth stones. He slipped them into his shepherd's bag. He took his sling in his hand, and he stepped out into the open valley to meet the giant. Goliath came forward with his shield-bearer before him. When he saw David, only a boy, with no sword, no armor, no spear, he was filled with scorn. "Am I a dog," he roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" And he cursed David by his gods. "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." But David did not run. He lifted his face to the giant, and his voice rang clear across the valley. "You come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin," he said, "but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand. All the earth will know that there is a God in Israel, and all who are gathered here will know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's." Then Goliath rose up and came on, heavy and roaring, to meet him. And David ran. He ran toward the giant, toward the battle line. As he ran, He reached into his bag and took out a stone. He set it in his sling. He whirled it once and twice and let it fly. The stone flew straight and true. It struck the giant on the forehead, and Goliath fell. He fell face down upon the ground, and he did not rise again. A great silence swept over the valley. Then David walked to where the giant lay. He lifted up Goliath's own sword in victory, holding it high against the sky. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was fallen, they turned and fled. The men of Israel rose with a shout, and the long fear of 40 days was broken. And so a shepherd boy with 5 smooth stones brought down a giant, because his trust was not in armor or in strength, but in the living God. David was small in the valley that day, but his faith made him taller than any giant. And all the earth remembered that the battle belongs to the Lord.